Congressman, first of all, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. On today's podcast, we have Congressman Andy Biggs, who is serving in his fifth term in the office representing Arizona's 5th District. In Congress, he sits on the House Oversight and Judiciary Committee. On the Judiciary Committee, he serves both as the chairman of the Subcommittee on Crime and Federal Government Surveillance and on the Subcommittee on Immigration Integrity, Security, and Enforcement. Throughout his time in Congress, Congressman Biggs has championed secure borders, strong interior enforcement, and common sense immigration reform. It is great to have you on here and somebody that I can call my friend. A lot of individuals need to know that any time that a border issue has come up, you've always answered the call and you've always been, directly involved with what's going on.
Well, thank you, Art. It's great to be with you. And one thing I wanted to ask is, when did we first meet? I mean, it feels like a long time ago.
So I first met you when you were in the House Senate.
Yeah.
And it's what's crazy about that is once in a while the picture will pop up in my memories. It was at a Starbucks, and the picture pops up in my memories, and I look the same as I did back when you were still in the Senate.
Yeah. Well, funny how memory can play tricks on you like that.
It
can, but
it definitely can. So you've been called and championed a lot of times by the boots on the ground as the border congressman, but you're not on the border. Your district is away from the border.
Yeah, I mean, so we're crow's flies maybe 70 miles from the border, but I mean, I grew up in a border congressional district. I grew up in Tucson, and that was Mo Udall's district, and we were right on the border, and we went down to Nogales often, and that's kind of how I knew the border, was just that experience. But then over the years, traveled pretty widely in Mexico, but what we have seen, and you know this, the border particularly, it's always been a bit of a problem, right?
Correct.
And we always know that, I mean, in Pinal County, where Sheriff Lamb has been, people come on up from the TO right through VCal Valley and right there. And you grew up in Douglas, and so I think you and I really have a special affinity for understanding what goes on the border, because it impacts everything in this state. It really does.
It does. So based on that, having an actual knowledge of what goes on in the border, you take that knowledge back to Washington, D.C. How difficult has it been at times to let the rest of the individuals in Congress know how bad it is? Because now everyone says every state's a border state, which every state, I like to say, has to deal with border state issues, but not every state's a border state, because we've been seeing it here for a long time. You've been here for a long time. How are you able to convey that message to the other individuals out there?
Well, so we've brought people down to the border, members of Congress down to the border, lots of them, I think 6 or more. And you've been there with me. Sheriff Lamb's been there with me. All the sheriffs all in Arizona. We've been down from McAllen to San Diego.
Yes.
That they all say this. They almost all say it when they say that. Oh, I had no idea.
Right.
Because most people don't realize the members of Congress, 2/3 of them live within an 1.5-hour flight, 2-hour flight from D.C. And they think that a big county is, I don't know, 30 by 40 miles. And we've got counties, I just came down from another county today that's bigger than New Jersey.
Correct.
In Arizona. So this is crazy. So when they come out here and they realize how wide open it is, how porous it is, the task that the Border Patrol has, the impossibility to really do something like get the statutory construct, which is operational control of the border, they begin to see it. So that's what we do. That bringing them down. The other thing is the Border Security Caucus, and you've spoken, Mark's spoken. We've had people come in and speak, and this is important because for a while, they were thinking I was crazy when I was telling them. But now it's like there's real voices.
And I understand the frustration in trying to get the message out, because we're in Arizona, and it's different than other states. Again, I harp back on people saying every state's a border state, but even as a border state, the things that affect California or New Mexico or Texas, it's different in Arizona. I've always, explained to people that the Arizona border has everything that all the other states have in one. So I think that's what's made it so difficult. You go out of your way to come out here and bring individuals. Do you even know how many congressional tours you've led out on the border?
I don't. It's got to be like 12, 15,
right?
Something like that, and more than I think we counted more than 60, and so I don't know what it is right
Correct.
now. And but it's been cool. I mean, I got Crocs off of one trip. I've literally stood there where I'm standing there, and there's one agent, right? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, here's a group of 350 people coming around, and we're it.
That's
crazy.
That is crazy, but I think that's what's important because so there's individuals that have come to the border. They'll take the picture from all over the states. They get to the fence, and I hear it all the time. Hey, I want to take a picture by the fence.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and you've heard it. That's like the big thing. It's I want to be by the fence. It looks better. You've taken those pictures by the fence, but you've also taken the time outside. So you lost track of the congressional, tours that you've helped put together. But you've also taken the time, and I'm witness to it, to come out to the border just when you're not in session. You're in Arizona and you want to go down there. So you've seen firsthand the issues with communication.
I've been arrested doing that.
You have.
I have.
I didn't know if you wanted to touch on that.
Yeah. I mean, literally, my wife, my chief, and my daughter, we drive down to the border. Mm-hmm. The next thing you know, we're getting pulled over.
You're getting pulled over.
On the border.
Yeah, and I think that was the frustrating part as well.
Yes.
And that was during the 4 years that the border was completely porous.
Exactly.
So I think that was an eye opener as well of how chaotic everything was on our borders. That here you are with your wife and your family in a vehicle, just driving down the border road, and you're getting pulled over. Yet you know that at the same time you have individuals from 168 different countries crossing that same border. Yeah. And they're not being detained, or they're simply just asking for asylum and getting released. How was that frustration the last 4 years?
Just absolutely frustrating. Like specifically the time that we got stopped multiple times on that trip, there was a line of people coming across the border, and nobody's doing anything with those people. And I'm like, well, are you going to stop those guys and inquire anything about them? There was no vetting being done, and agents couldn't be on the border because they were processing. It was really frustrating.
And you got a chance to see some of those processing areas. Yeah. So you saw how bad it actually was in the processing centers. They've since taken them down in some spots here in Arizona. Yeah. And you've seen that. You've
Did they take the one down on the TO reservation yet?
Yeah, that one was taken down. That was just a tent. It was a holding facility. And I guess that's where the frustrating part was, that you're seeing there's a lot more access to what's happening in places like Texas. There was a lot less access here in Arizona. Right. But explain some of that frustration, how you're kind of leading the charge. And sometimes, and we've had these conversations before, you and I, it seems like a completely uphill battle.
Yeah, it was. It was very difficult because, especially under the Biden administration, I know that the agents wanted to get the truth out, right? And I also know that some of the sector chiefs really wanted to get the truth out there. Right. But they were being, thumbed down by the leadership. I mean, Mayorkas he didn't want the truth to get out. He did not want that truth to get out because it would make him look idiotic.
Right.
Actually, more than idiotic. It would make him look criminal, what he was doing. Mm-hmm. And that's really what was happening there.
So you've seen the change. You've spoken to constituents. The constituents tell you there's a difference now.
Yeah.
And now the military is also going to get involved.
Right.
What are your thoughts on actually having the military involved in some areas of our border now?
Well, I think it's really interesting because, especially because of Fort Huachuca, right, and the way that the president has kind of basically annexed all of that easement along all the federal easements in Arizona along the border, and basically co-opted them and said, you're going to be part of Fort Huachuca. That's a really clever way of doing it. But what we've seen is, when you guys are allowed to enforce the law, law gets enforced, and people stay away. And having the assistance of the federal government here, it's a game changer in the sense that I'm hoping that they're going to allow some of their material to be used, right?
Right.
And that'll be really good. But what an interesting concept to actually use everything you possibly can to secure the border. I don't know, seems to me like that's a constitutional requirement for the executive branch, but they, under the previous administration, didn't do it.
No, it is. How do you think Congress can act moving forward, and even in assisting some of the local law enforcement as well? Obviously, you're getting individuals that have come through. There's always been a detention issue. You saw it firsthand.
Yeah.
They had to build detention facilities overnight to try to keep some of these individuals. Moving forward, what can Congress push through to assist local law enforcement so we're better prepared in case we have another situation like that?
It's all resources driven, I think. I mean, you got the policy, which has changed, but you have to have the resources. The resources so the local law enforcement can actually, first of all, be trained, interact, have the communication, and be able to move that individual to wherever they need to go. So it's going to be a resource issue, in my opinion. And that's what Congress is trying to do now, right? Trying to do now to get that money there as quickly as possible. But if you don't have those resources, then it's going to be a real problem. The other thing is, I'm a big believer in this. You've got places like California that don't want to participate. Now, which isn't true, by the way. There are sheriffs in California that want to participate and understand. But until you actually tell San Diego County, good grief, until you deal with places like San Diego County and just say, well, thanks for coming. You're not going to get a parting gift. You're not going to get anything. Then we're going to have these holes. But it's a resource-driven issue at this point, I think.
And that is the frustrating part. You mentioned that there's still people think of California and you're not going to have sheriffs that care, but you have sheriffs that actually care about fixing it. We have the same issue though in Arizona. Yeah. Right, you have some sheriffs that they've said that their county is okay when we realize it hasn't been. We've been to some of these counties ourselves where we've seen large groups coming through, and then a day later you have somebody from that community in law enforcement say, "We don't have an issue in our county." How do you combat that? So I know you're able to give out the money, but how do you make sure that the money is utilized correctly and not in something that doesn't make sense for border security? Well, is that just here's the blanket and you got to wait and see how they do it?
No, you have to have oversight over the money that you're giving. I mean, that's the problem. Look, America doesn't have money to give to anybody with the hope that they use it the right way. We have such a hole. We have a $2.25 trillion structural deficit every year. So any money that we're giving out, even on this, we're borrowing that money.
Right.
So that means that it needs to go somewhere. We need to watch where it's going and really facilitate that it goes to the right thing. If it doesn't, then we need to bring it back. The other thing is you have to provide the right incentives and the right disincentives. You have to incentivize them to use the resources the way that you need them to use them. And occasionally, you're going to have to provide a disincentive to not misuse it. And that would be a kind of a punitive measure, but you don't want it to be, you can't dissuade somebody from using it by having a big hammer over their head unless what they've done is overt and really bad.
So we saw a lot of the rhetoric and the back and forth before, and they said, you need Congress to pass some law in order to drop the numbers. That's always been said. You've been around and saw that is not necessary. We saw it during 2016 with rhetoric alone, the numbers dropped. Mm-hmm. Obviously, everything went chaotic over the last 4 years in the administration. But once again, we're back at a point where the current administration was able to drop the numbers. Right now, we're looking at upwards of over 90%. The numbers have dropped. Yeah. You seeing that, you still see that we do need some type of reform. HR 2 was out there. What do you think the plan is, or how can something get done moving forward in order to make sure that it doesn't happen again as bad as it was?
Well, so if you've got policy like MPP or anything else like that, the app, the crazy app,
Yeah, the Disney Fast app, as I like to call it.
The Fast Pass into the country,
Yes.
the CHNV program, though you have to codify against those. And so if you're looking at what President Trump has done, that with his executive orders, you need to actually pass those into law.
Correct.
So that the next person, next Congress, you'll have, because it will get litigated. If you have it codified, now you have ability to actually go in and litigate that issue to enforce or mandate that the law be enforced. That's the problem. It seems to whipsaw back and forth, right?
Right.
And that's the problem. If you don't codify this stuff, you're just hoping. You're just hoping.
Well, we've seen it in the state of Arizona just recently. The bills were passed where and it goes back to talking that some law enforcement agencies will not contact ICE or immigration. We just saw a bill here in Arizona, the ICE bill, as I like to call it, that was getting passed, and you had everyone had support. The state wanted it. They don't want criminals, and I talk to people all the time, and you deal with individuals from both the right side of the aisle, the left side of the aisle, and those in between. Yeah. And they all say the same thing. They don't want criminals in America. They don't want crime in our country. But they voted on it, and they had a bill pushing forward in the state of Arizona where we were going to be able to, I don't want to say force, but put all law enforcement. Incentivize all law enforcement in the state of Arizona to make sure that you called immigration when you already arrested a criminal. That's the point. That's where people, some of it was getting lost. If you arrest someone for committing a crime, and then once you've arrested them and you realize that they're in the country illegally, this bill was pretty much stating that now you had to call immigration. Right. And it got vetoed. That's got to be frustrating when you're seeing that in your own state.
Well, it is, because I think the vast majority of sheriffs in this state, and I would even say the majority of police chiefs that I've talked to, they want to pass that individual over. And the veto basically said, we don't care. We don't care what the law is. We don't care about enforcement. We don't care about impacts that a criminal, alleged criminal, or real criminal who is in custody of police, we don't care that they're going to be released into our community. Because that's what's going to happen ultimately. We're not giving them to ICE. Right. Well, so where are they going? Well, they're going back out on the street. And, even in places like Orange County, California, by the way, during a 2-year period during Biden's term, they released more than 2,000 criminal illegal aliens back in their community. That's what this governor basically said she was going to do. And that's a problem. And I was talking to a sheriff just today, and he indicated pretty clearly he didn't care he was upset that it didn't become law. Correct. But he said, and when that happens in my county, if there's a detainer or a hold, we're going to hold them for ICE. And that's what we need. And
that was the argument. I had spoken to some individuals, and they said, well, they have the ability to call ICE already, which is true. They have the ability to do it. But there's those select few that won't do it. And this would say, hey, you have to make sure that you do not release criminals, especially now in a time that we're seeing judges assist people that have committed crimes out the back doors. We need to have the proper laws in place to stop that from continuing to happening. We certainly don't want it in our state. No,
right on. I 100% right. Well, also think of this. You've got jurisdictions that will not hold within the station itself. They're going to put the person out into the parking lot and say, you can come in the parking lot. Well, the problem is that's dangerous to law enforcement, the agents. It's dangerous to the criminal. And we've seen some of that where there's been violence perpetrated in the parking lot. It's just so much smarter, easier, efficient to say, we've got this guy, he's down in this holding cell, and come on, we're going to give him to you. And you have the transfer right there, and everybody's safer.
That's the way it should be. Yeah. Congressman Andy Biggs, my friend, thank you for taking the time to be here with FAIR and explaining the issues that are happening on the border and everything. As I like to say, the border congressman. I've always said that many times before. Is there anything you want to share with your constituents, with Arizona, and with America as a whole?
Well, first of all, thank you. Art's a good friend, and we have been down to the border many times together. Spent going to Antelope Wells, which is one of the most remote.
Look it up. You'll find it in the map.
Yeah, all that good stuff. Thanks to FAIR for what they do on this issue. This is still a critical issue because, and although we're pretty close to operational control, don't forget we still have in Arizona. We've got broad stretches that are basically the drug and human trafficking corridor of the southwest border. We got that going. We got to stop that, and I'm looking forward to us getting together and working. We'll continue to work together, you, me, and all of our friends in this room, and we'll try to make that happen.
Absolutely, and exciting times. We're ahead of the game, and I think right now is the time to continue moving forward and get things done right. I'm excited to be your friend and to see what all you're going to continue to do to serve our country. Thank you very much for being on here.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
My buddy.
Great job, guys.